Happy Wednesday. Hope you're having an amazing week so far. Welcome to another episode of Unzipped with Sherry, with yours truly, of course. I'm Sherry. We have a really exciting show today. We're going to get into it in just a second. Just wanted to give a quick update on the challenge that I've been doing. I've been doing the 75 hard. I'm currently in the middle of phase 2 of the 75 hard, and today is day 30. It's the last day of the challenge, so I'm super duper excited because I would really like to take a break tomorrow because I've been doing 2 workouts a day and it's been hot as Smurf outside. So I'm really looking forward to that. But moving on, we have a really great show today. Jamie's joining us and she had the gastric bypass, but 25 years ago, which is completely insane because we know how common it is now as a tool to have weight loss surgery. But back then in the 90s, it wasn't really a very common option. So to have somebody who's so experienced in this, who has a lot of longevity and can share what's worked for her and what doesn't, we're totally excited to have her on the show today. So Jamie, I hope you're ready because we're about to get unzipped. We all have a story on how we got here, right? So for me, I used to be over 350 pounds until one day I made the single decision that I wanted change. Weight loss surgery has saved my life, and now I am here for you. I want to hear your story. You know, the one that happened during that before and after picture. It's time to unzip. What's your story?
Hey.
Hello, gorgeous. How are you today?
Good. How are you?
I am doing so fabulous. It's Wednesday. It's hump day. It's gorgeous outside before it gets blazing hot. I'm in a good mood. How is your day going today?
It's going good. A little tired working the overnights, but it is another beautiful day, and we're all lucky to have seen it and woken up, and we're alive and healthy. So
Absolutely. And just let the viewers know at home, you are a nurse, correct?
I am a nurse, and I work nights, so getting
Right.
up in the midday is a little hard.
First and foremost, thank you so much for your service to people because that is no easy feat to do.
Thank
And
you.
the way that you guys, put everyone else before yourselves is just an incredible profession. So thank you first and foremost for that.
Thank you. Thank you.
So I kind of we have so much to get into because and I feel how are we going to really cram 25 years into an hour show? We're just going to do the best that we can and kind of figure it out the way. But I thought maybe what we can do is kind of start with your origin story. What made you, what brought you to 1996 when you decided to have this surgery?
Well, I was a young mom. So at 18, I had my first daughter, who is now 27. And I was always on the bigger side. But I was able to keep up with my weight. And when I had my daughter, I was also married. I married somebody 10 years older than me. And, I thought I could fix him. First love, I can fix him. I'm younger than him, of course. And the relationship just wasn't going anywhere. And I had to realize that I had to do something to support my daughter because he wasn't going to step up and do it. But then she was 2.5, and I realized that I was just not keeping up with her. She'd want to go play and, toddler stuff. And I just had no energy. I didn't have the stamina. I would, try to run with her in the park, and I was losing my breath. And, my biggest thing was when I took her to McDonald's. Back then, McDonald's, a lot of them still don't have it anymore, but it's that playground area indoors.
Oh, yeah.
And I remember I was with my mom, and she was like, "Mommy, come upstairs, come in the tubes with me." And I was 390 pounds at the time. And I was like, okay. I'm I don't know if this is going to hold me. And she was all the way, and I still remember, she was all the way up at the top of the tube, and it had a little window in it. And she was knocking on the window, like, "Mama, Mama." And I went to go to try to get in, and I just couldn't fit. And I had to have my mom go with her. And it just broke my heart. I was like, I chose to have her, and I can't even give her the life that she wants. She,
Right.
I couldn't keep up with her. I couldn't play with her. I was always tired, and I knew that I had to do something then.
Which and like to a 2.5-year-old, you don't know. Like
Mm-mm.
you don't understand why mom's not playing with me or why she doesn't understand physics and stigmas and stuff like that. Like I can't like I'm not a mom yet, but I can imagine how like devastating that feels.
Yeah, and I was realizing too that what were we doing in McDonald's like 3 times a week? Like my eating habits had become her eating habits.
And then so back then we didn't know what it was. Like there was not a lot of I mean cuz like what's funny is in 96 I remember that was around the time that fen was huge.
Yep,
And it was like the miracle drug. I was on it like at
I was
13
on it.
years old. Um and I remember I had an aunt who had gastric bypass like around 98, 99, I think like that. But I
Okay.
had never even heard of it. And I remember thinking like, wait, what is stomach stapling? Like, what does that even mean? Um, so what made you kind of decide to look into it, or how was it presented to you that it was even an option at that time?
So I had done everything. I did the fen.
Hmm.
I was my mom at like I said, I was always on the bigger side, and my mom is very petite, 5'2", 120 pounds all the time, and my mom at a young age would have me on Weight Watchers. So I was always on a diet, and I remember at this time I actually went to a Chinese chiropractor for diet.
Really?
He put a staple in the inside of my ear. So every time that I was hungry, I had to rotate my ear out, up, and down.
What?
Yeah, I had to do it 5 times. And supposedly that was going to help. Didn't help. Didn't help at all. So that's when he mentioned it to me.
Yeah.
He was like, "You a big girl, it's not working." He's like, "Why don't you think about bypass?" And for me, I was like, "Heart bypass?" And he was like,
Right.
"No." He's like, "Gastric bypass." And that's when I started to look into it. I have a sister who's 10 years older than me, and she actually helped me find the doctor. And at the time, it was only 2 doctors in the state of New Jersey that was doing it.
That's crazy.
Yep.
And then so what was like that first consultation like when you were like talking to the doctor about like what it entails?
The first I remember sitting down with him, and he was older doctor. So I was like, 20 years old, and I'm thinking, "Oh my god, this old man's gonna kill me."
Right.
And he was just sitting there, and he asked me the same thing. He's like, "What have you done to try to lose weight? How motivated are you? And what is your reason?"
Hmm.
And when I told him, "I want to be healthy. I want to be around for my daughter. I, I don't want to die. I don't want to live like this anymore."
Right.
Um, And he was like, "It's an intense surgery." And I remember he said to me, because back then it wasn't laparoscopic. He's like, "You're going to have a huge incision." So I have an incision from breastbone to belly button. I have a scar. And it didn't even phase me. I was like, in 20 years, nobody's seen my stomach in the sun. So what does it matter?
Right.
Like for me, it wasn't anything superficial. It was, I needed to live. And it was my second surgery. My first one was my C-section, and this was my second surgery. But first one to ever be put to sleep and stuff like that.
Right.
And I was just like, okay. Like there was never a second doubt in my mind. When I hear my mom and my dad are like, "Don't do it. You can do it on your own. Don't do it. You can die, this and that." And I'm like, "I can't do it. Don't you see? I am 395 pounds at the time. Like I can't do it." So I
And
never.
and you already answered a question I was going to ask is because back then it wasn't popular, it wasn't like very known about. I'm curious like what people's reactions were to you doing it cuz I remember like when my aunt had talked about doing it, I was still young. I didn't really understand, what it entailed. And I didn't judge her, but my initial thought is even though I was fat as a teenager, I just still felt like you're taking the easy way out. I was like, why we live in a decade of Jane Fonda videos and
Yes.
the Richard Simmons, like there was such a
Yeah.
fitness craze in the 80s and
Yeah.
90s
Yep.
that like I never understood why somebody would go through such a drastic measure, to lose weight when at the time there's all these new resources and medications and stuff. Now, obviously, I do not feel the same way now. It's
Right.
100% different, but you had this when that was the mentality for the average person. So how did that like affect you mentally when people were not really being as supportive or
I'll be
maybe
honest.
judging?
The only people that really knew were my parents, my sister, my husband at the time, and like two aunts. I didn't tell anybody because I knew that I was going to get ridiculed for it. I
Yeah.
knew it. I knew it because that's just the way it was at the time. You're taking the easy way out.
Mhm.
You can do it on your own. You're just weak. Put yourself on a strict diet, apply yourself. I didn't tell anybody.
Good for you. Now, even though like your family was concerned, were they still supportive when
Yes.
when you made the decision, like regardless of what you think, I'm doing this?
Yes. My family was behind me 100%.
Okay, I love that. And so I'm curious, like how things have possibly or maybe not have changed since then. What was like the pre-surgery process like for you
So
back
my
then?
pre-surgery, it was supposed to be 6 months. My wait time was 6 months.
Okay.
You had to do your pulmonary function test, cardiologist, endocrinologist, nutritionist. I want to say I had to have 4 or 6 psych evals with sessions.
Really?
Sessions. You had to have the sessions. Um, and the nutritionist, you had to meet with her, and for the 6 months you were not allowed to gain any weight. You had to have lost the weight because back then it was all insurance.
Right.
Now from what I look at, and people can go to Mexico and pay $10,000 and
You
things
can
like
do it
that.
out of pocket a lot of places.
Before, you were talking about a $60,000 surgery, and
Right.
nobody was taking it out of, cash. It had to be
No.
insurance approved. So that was the other step. If you didn't do all these steps, and you could have, and insurance could have still said no, depending on what your insurance had, because back then not all the insurances were covering them.
Right.
It was very, very small handful. And I had just happened to be lucky, thank God, that my ex-husband's insurance was one of them that was covering it.
And that's crazy because back then you wouldn't have thought to cover something like that because it
Exactly.
wasn't very popular.
Right.
Now, I'm almost 8 years out, and I remember when I started going through the process, insurance was starting to cover it, not to the level it is now, though. So,
Yes.
like, not every policy would have bariatric written down.
Yes.
So I can't even imagine like how, like you said, there's only two doctors in all of Jersey that even did this surgery back then.
Yep.
What I'm fascinated by is that you had to do like 4 to 6 psych evals
Yes.
beforehand.
Because they wanted to make sure that, one, you weren't like trying to make up a story to get yourself cleared, and
Yeah.
they wanted to see where you really mentally were.
Like that literally, why did we take that away? Because nowadays,
No.
before surgery, the only requirement is one session, one
Yes.
evaluate, not even like a session, just an evaluation to see if you'll be able to handle or be mentally prepared for the surgery, but you don't delve into anything. So what were some of the, I mean, obviously you don't reveal what was in the sessions, but like what was an overview on some of the things? Like, do they prepare you for stuff? Do you just talk about what you're feeling?
I never made it there. I never made it there.
Well, you never made it to the appointments?
No, because I'll tell you what happened. So, my I had started to have discoloration around my neck, and they the surgeon wasn't worried at the moment, but it started to get worse. And when I went to my second appointment with him, he said, I need you to go see endocrinologist because sometimes the darkening around your neck can be a sign of insulin resistance. So he
Right.
thought maybe that's what it was. So he's like, let's go get you medically cleared, and then we'll do that end part. And I said, okay. So I went to the cardiologist. I mean, I went to endocrinologist. He did all my hormone checks, all my levels. He said, they're perfectly fine.
Okay.
Okay. So went back to the doctor. He said, let's do cardiology because they had their own doctors. Like you couldn't pick any doctor you want. It had to be the ones that they wanted you to go to. And I said, okay. I went to see him, but in between there, I did my pulmonary function test. And then I went to go see the cardiologist, and he did an EKG and he did an echo on me. And he came back into the room and he said, "Your heart cannot handle your weight." And I looked at him and I go, "What are you talking about?" He goes, "That's why you're getting the discoloration in your neck." He says, the way some people, when they can't get enough oxygen, their lips will turn blue, they'll
Mhm.
get cyanotic. This is how your body's responding to it. You're not perfusing to your brain properly. He's like, "You can't wait." So I was like, "Oh my God." So here I'm, shitting in my pants. 20 years
Right.
old,
It's
you're
also like
telling me
0
all
to
this. And I'm
100.
like, "What?" So he said, "I'm going to call your surgeon." I went home. Not even 5 days later, the surgeon calls me. He's like, I need to I need you to come see me. So I was like, "Oh, okay." So I go and I see him. And he says, "If I make you wait any longer, you may not make it."
Holy shit.
He said, "By the time your daughter is 5, now she's 2.5. He's like, if you
Right.
don't have the surgery by the time your daughter's 5, you'll be dead." I said, "So what am I doing?" He said, "You're going to have the surgery." And 3 weeks later, I ended up having the surgery. Never had my psych eval. I
You never
met
even
once,
the
once
first
with the nutrition. Never, never. And that was the fear that we had was, is insurance going to cover this? Because now I didn't do any of their,
one. Right.
preliminaries. And he handled the insurance company. And the only thing I ever paid was a $50 copay.
Hold up a second.
Yeah.
So you didn't have a single appointment.
I
How
had
did
endocrine, cardiologist, and pulmonary function test. That was it.
so then what goes through your mind like the days and night before surgery
I hope I
having
don't
like
drop
kind of
dead.
like
I hope I don't drop dead.
I mean that's a valid
I
concern.
mean, those 3 weeks, the way he was saying, your heart can't handle it. And I was starting to see that even going up a flight of stairs, it was a struggle for me.
Right.
And I was like, "God, I hope I don't drop dead." That
Yeah,
was the truth.
and that's crazy. So we had a really great question that came in. So how did you feel when the doctor made the situation so dire? Like when he made it sound so urgent, like what goes through your mind in that moment?
I don't want to die. Like, okay. Like, oh,
You were
let's
just like,
do
do what you
this.
got to do at that point.
What choice do I have? What choice do I have? I have a 2-year-old that I need to take care of. She's my world, and have the surgery that'll keep me going, that'll make me healthier.
Now,
I never thought twice.
no, I mean it makes sense, especially like if you want to. The thoughts that go through your head, like you do not want to leave a child behind or anything like
No,
that. If
because
there's
my
prevent,
purpose was for her.
yeah, 100%. Um, so I'm curious because you didn't have it laparoscopically, like you said. You had like this giant incision,
Yeah.
and if I remember, it was like from your breastbone down to your belly button.
Yep.
What is the recovery like for that?
So with my surgery at the time, your hospital stay was 5 days.
Holy crap!
2 days in ICU, 3 days in med surge. And the recovery, I don't know, because I was younger, you know, I'm old now.
You're not old.
It was rough. I kind of, people now that I'm older and I'm a nurse and I see people with abdominal surgeries. I was just like that, hunched over. I couldn't really straighten up. Moving was slow because
Yeah,
I was so heavy. My IV accesses my veins weren't that great. So I remember I had an EJ, which is an external jugular IV here. And so I was kind of like this. My mom came to see me. My sister was there every day. My mom came to see me day 2. 'Cause my mom does not like hospitals. Neither does my dad. And my dad was like, "I can't see my baby like this. I'll wait till you come." But they called me every day. And my mom came to see me and she almost passed out. But she, just by seeing the IV in the neck,
yeah,
you'd think, how are her 2 daughters nurses and your parents can't handle it.
yeah. No,
But my mom was like, "I'm gonna pass out." She's like, "I can't see you like this." So I told my sister, just take her home. But it was rough. It was rough. And you had to wear this binder, and they have like 3 binders put together for me because they don't have the big ones. They got these little ones. But the recovery was rough, but I definitely got better once I went home in my own environment.
right. So, wait, and how long? Because that's a pretty like gnarly incision. Like, how long does it take before you're able to like fully kind of feel like yourself again?
So with back then, the way they did the bypass was they also removed 10 feet of intestines. Well, maybe it was my surgeon that just did it. I don't know about the other ones, but he removed 10 feet of intestines. So, because the part of, as long as the food takes to travel through the intestines and come out of the body, the more it
Right.
breaks down. So, he removed 10 feet of intestines by also bypassing my stomach. Um, so, it made the recovery rough. And, the incision was pretty bad. It was staples.
Yeah.
It's all staples. And I had my surgery December 15th, right before Christmas.
Glutton for punishment.
I'm telling you, he gave me a date. He checked with the hospital. He gave me a date. Boom, set. All right. I didn't even think Christmas, my kid, didn't even think about it. I just said yes. So when I came home, I was supposed to have my staples removed after the holidays, but my doctor was going to be away. So my doctor decided to take my staples out before then. So I had a part right above my belly button, about 3 inches, that did not fully close. So I could literally stick my hand all the way up to here into the wound. Thank God that I had a sister who was already a nurse. I had to do what's called wet to dry dressings 3 times a day. And then you have to tape around it.
Oh my God.
Nowadays, they have something that's called the shoelace, that it's kind of like a taped area, but it has like laces in the middle that you can just open up, clean the dressing, and close it back up.
Yeah.
Tie it back up. They didn't have that back then. So it was 3 times a day, and the wound took almost 3 months to heal. So every single day, 3 times a day, ripping the tape off from the same
Yeah.
area over and over. I'm telling you that for me was worse than the whole surgery, because the area was so raw, and
Yeah.
keep doing it and keep doing it. And that for me was the worst.
So then I have to ask, like, when you're in the middle of this, like, that is intense. And
Yes.
it's going on for a couple of months. Like, at some point, do you have thoughts of like, why the hell
Why
did
did
I?
I do this?
Yeah.
Why did I put myself through this?
Was it
Why
worth
did
it?
I do this? Was it worth it? Yep. I had those thoughts, those same exact thoughts. Why am I doing this? Why did I do this to myself?
And then, so how long did it take for you to really start to feel like the benefit of the surgery itself?
I'm going to tell you, it really took me about 6 months before I started feeling good. Good. I don't know if it's because, oh, also, the part of the intestines that they removed is also a part that absorbs the iron. So I can take a whole bottle of iron pills and I don't absorb them at all. So I
Really?
have to get IV iron infusions. But we didn't find this out until 17 years after the surgery.
No shit. So were you like starting to get like some weird like symptoms or something like that?
17 years later, I did. I was at work, and I'm an ER nurse. I was at work, and my husband kept telling me, "Babe, you look like a chicken's ass."
What does that
And I'm like, "What does that mean?" He's like, your color, it doesn't look good." And I'm like, "I feel fine. I feel fine." And I would just keep working and keep working. And, I'm the type of person that even if I don't feel good, as long as I keep pushing myself, I get
mean?
through. And I was in the ER, and I just couldn't catch my breath. And my color was horrible looking. And my heart rate was high. And the ER doctor's like, he looked at me, he goes, "Are you all right?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I just don't feel good. I just can't catch my breath." He's like, "We're gonna do lab work on you." And I go, "No, we're too busy." He's like,
Right.
"Get your ass on that stretcher, get registered, and we're gonna do lab work." We did lab work, did an EKG. My heart rate was 130, sinus tach. My hemoglobin was 6.4, and my iron was 2.
Okay, well, I mean, obviously you're gonna know before me, but like, what is like a normal range for iron normally?
You want your total iron to be somewhere between, for a bypass patient, it's usually between 25 and 35.
Oh, so that's pretty low.
And your hemoglobin, for a woman, especially a woman that's still menstruating, you want it to be between 10 and 12, 10 on the low side.
Okay,
And I was 6.4.
that's pretty low.
and my body just started compensating for no iron, so it started to pull from the red blood cells. That's what caused me to have iron deficiency anemia. So I was in the hospital for 4 days, 2 units of blood, and 4 units of iron, 4 transfusions of iron.
Holy crap.
Yeah.
Somebody wrote in, what are some of the side effects of low iron?
So tired. These are mine, but most people get the same reactions. Tiredness, um, pale underneath your eyes will be, instead of red, they'll be more white looking. Your gums will be paler looking. Some people get restless leg syndrome. I do. It, it's really, and sometimes you crave like the craziest things. Like for me, I crave ice, and a lot of people with iron deficiency anemia crave ice.
Do you think it's more because of the temperature coldness of it or the
No,
height?
no, and it's crazy because I still remember what it tastes. It tastes like sweet candy. Like I loved going to work because the ice at work tasted so good, better than the ice I have at home. It's
Easy.
insane. It's just it's like pregnant women when they get pica. Some of them will eat like laundry detergent, chalk. Your
Yeah.
body is missing something, a mineral, a vitamin, and it starts to crave certain things. And it was ice.
That is freaking insane. Like I've
Yeah.
never heard anybody talk about ice tasting like sweet candy.
Yep, it tastes so good. And that's how I even now know, because I'm supposed to go every 6 months, but nurses make the worst patients. And I'll miss my appointment. I push it longer. Then I start to get the restless leg. My husband will tell me, "Oh, the iron's low," and then I'll start to crave ice, and that's when I know.
And you're like, I know something's off now.
Yeah, I'm like, oh gosh. Like I know already when the restless leg starts, I'm like, okay, I know what's going on here. But then once the craving of the ice, I'm like, okay, all right, time to go.
That is
So I
so
see.
crazy. And
Yeah.
one thing like I wanted us to talk about too is you and I have talked about this, how we live in such a technological age. And people who know me know I am very technologically challenged. So if something's out of whack, I cannot function.
We
Um,
sisters.
yeah, and you're like the same way, which I love. So at least we can bond over that. But
Yep.
back then, there was no technology. There was no internet. There was no, or maybe internet was starting to come out, but there was definitely no Facebook or social
No.
media. There was no Pinterest to get recipes from. There was no YouTube to learn like how to cook or do anything. So what was the journey like for you as far as like how to keep yourself, eating healthy or when it came to meal planning or
So the diet plan back then is different than it is now. My diet plan back then was 6 weeks. Everything was 6 weeks. 6 weeks of clear liquid, 6 weeks of puree, 6 weeks of soft food, and then 6 weeks of, oh my goodness. You'd put the like meat and chicken in, but you'd have to do 3 weeks of meat and then 3 weeks chicken first and then meat, and then you were back to your normal. But everything was 6 weeks. So I remember now. I'm Spanish. My mom's Cuban, so the 24th of December is always a big celebration for us. So I was still in the hospital. I came home on the 25th. So my mom had everything set up in the house. She didn't want to have Christmas Eve without me, so she did Christmas Day. My mom pureed rice and beans for me. I was like,
oh
first
my
of all, I can't eat this. But second of all, it really looked like dog poop. Like it was nasty looking. I was like, oh my gosh. But it was hard. And my mom is a petite woman, has always been small frame. And she eats like no meat, red meat, she'll eat only chicken, lots of vegetables, so I literally followed my plan when I started to eat after her.
interesting.
She eats no sweets, no sodas.
That's just like I honestly like I can't even because I know like when I went granted like I said it was like 8 years ago. There wasn't as many resources as there is now, but there
No.
was enough that was able to at least sustain me. Like Pinterest became my best friend when I had the surgery, because I was able to like look up new recipes and stuff like that. But and I remember like, and we talked about this, like my aunt had it when I was younger, and I just remember her telling she would still go to McDonald's, and I thought that was weird. But
Hmm.
she would get like a single cheeseburger, and she would have like 2 or 3 bites, and then she put it back in the wrapper, and then she would set it aside, and then a couple hours, like she. And I was like, I'm
Yeah.
like, should you be eating McDonald's if you have this surgery? And she goes, yeah, but this cheeseburger is literally lasting me all day.
Right.
And I didn't understand that, but I guess like in hindsight, like where do you go to find ideas for shit?
Back then, you just eat. I'm assuming maybe the nutritionist gave them plans. I don't
Yeah,
know
you
because I
knew the
never got
nutrition.
that far. Um, but for me, I just followed how the 6 weeks of everything, and I just followed my mom.
Yeah. And that's smart. Now, back then, was there like at the hospital, did they have like a support group or any kind of a group that you can get together and
They
talk?
didn't have one in the hospital. He himself had his own support group, but they were older people. It wasn't really anybody my age. They were
Oh,
older people, and they were going into the surgery, or some had the surgery, but they didn't have like this complication that I had where the incision dehisced.
right.
So it was I didn't feel comfortable because they were all older than me and doing different things, and they were better, and I had this, excuse me, this incision, and so I went to like two, and I never went back.
That sucks. But like, what was so then? Like for the first year or so, what's your mindset like? You're kind of literally this lone wolf on this journey by yourself. There's nobody that can relate to what you're going through.
Yeah, and that's why I love all the support groups and the people, especially TikTok has so many, weight loss surgery patients, and I love it. And my husband will be like, "Why are you joining a support group? You've been here for like 25 years. You're like the
Right.
veteran." And I'm like, "Because I never had that." And I love having that community. Even if it's 25 years later, I still feel like I'm learning things. Because in this journey, it doesn't matter how long you've had it, you're always able to learn. How does this one stay focused? How does this one maintain? How does this one work out? How does this do this? And I try to take little bits of every information that I know that is helping somebody else and see if it'll apply to me and if I can improve myself and my journey.
Absolutely. So out of curiosity, over the last 25 years, have you had any hiccups? Did you ever deal with any kind of like setbacks or regain or
Yeah.
anything? Oh,
Yes.
you're
So
ready to
one
answer.
of the issues I had, and they only found this about 5 years ago, was um, so when he did the bypass, the stomach was actually the separate part of the stomach that they removed wasn't removed. It was actually still in there, and the suture line. So your stomach is now like this big, and then you have the other part which was bigger that they removed now. Mine was still in there, and the suture line started to open up, and it caused a fistula. So what a fistula is kind of like, this is my old stomach, this is my new stomach. It's separated here. A fistula, what it is a tunnel that connects
What?
between something. So I ended up getting a fistula, and what was happening was I would eat, and food would go into the O pouch and sit there. So I would get
What even
sick.
happened?
Hmm. I would, I guess if it was gonna happen, it happened to me. And
Oh,
I was starting to gain weight. But the worst was I was getting this horrible, horrible heartburn all the time. It was I was living on Tums. I had put on about 20 pounds, and I wasn't eating anything different. I didn't know what was going on. I went to literally 7 doctors, and nobody wanted to touch me because they didn't know how the guy did the surgery back then. And
right.
everybody's answer to me was, "Well, why don't you go back to the original surgeon?" And I was like, "Wow, that's a great idea." But he died. And finally, I found one doctor. And my husband pleaded with me. He's like, "Let's go to this one visit." I go, "Why am I going to go? I've had 6 doctors that already told me no. Why
Right.
am I going to go?" He's like, "Just go to this last one." He goes, "I promise I won't ask you to go again," because he saw how miserable I was. I would sleep with like 8 pillows, sitting up. It was just hardly ate anything. It was horrible. And I said, "Fine." So I get there, and I already have an attitude. Like, I know I had an attitude with the
Yeah, you're
doctor
like,
because I'm already like, "You're gonna tell me no. I'm wasting my time." He's like, "Do you have any CAT scan? And I said, yeah, this is my CAT scan. Right. Because, I mean, with this pain, sometimes I felt like I was having a heart attack.
Yeah.
So I was like, yeah, here's my CAT scan. He goes, all right, I'm going to go into the office. Goes into the office, and I'm just looking at my husband. I'm like, this is like a waste of time. And he's like, just be patient. Just be patient. Trust, trust. And I said, yeah, okay, you be patient, but I know what's going on. So the nurse comes back. She goes, the doctor like to see you in his office. And I go into his office, and he goes, you're going to be a pain in my ass, but I'm going to do your surgery. And I was like, you're going to fix me? He's like, yeah, I'm going to fix you. He's like, I'm going to try to. He said that he had said to me that surgery should only take about an hour and a half. It took 6 hours because it took him an hour just to get through the scar tissue. And I
Oh my,
said, please don't cut me open, because I remember, even though the recovery wasn't horrible, it wasn't enjoyable back then. So I
no.
can only imagine, oh, 20 years later, how it was going to be. And he was like, I'm going to try my best. I'm going to try my best. He ended up having to call his partner to come into the OR to try to help him. And he was like, I was this close to cutting you open. He's like, but I understand why you were getting all that heartburn as well. He said, you had a hernia behind your diaphragm. And when you do a CAT scan, you couldn't see it because it hides behind your diaphragm. So all this time I thought I was crazy because I kept having this heartburn and nobody could find what was going on. He was like, I'm sorry, nobody ever found it.
That's great. Now, because that was so many years later, was this procedure now laparoscopically, or they like cut you?
Thank God. This one was laparoscopic.
Okay.
Yes.
So was the recovery time hopefully better?
Oh, yes. Recovery time was definitely much better. Only
Ah,
thing is my anatomy is different now. So my stomach now is in a reversed C because he had to do some maneuvering around.
interesting.
Yeah.
There's a part of me that kind of wants to see that, but I don't know if I can handle it if I saw it. I just like the idea of it is just like fascinating.
Hmm.
So overall, like what is the last 25, like how has it changed everything?
Well, I mean, I'll be honest with you. My first husband, he was so supportive with me going into the surgery. And then after I lost a majority of the weight, he just couldn't really handle it. And we ended up getting a divorce.
Was it like a
And
jealousy thing or like an insecurity
it
thing?
was an insecurity thing.
Okay.
And my husband now, I've been with him 20 years, and he has always known me this size.
Right.
And he's always supportive. Even when I was having issues with my stomach, he's always been supportive of me. He knows that I don't eat hot food. Don't do
Okay.
it. I'm sorry. Hey. So I don't eat hot food. And
Max is clearly offended that you will
I
not
know
eat.
Maximus. So he'll taste food for me. He'll be like, "Oh, that's too greasy. Don't eat that." You know, he's very supportive. But my first husband was not. Sorry.
No, you're good. Oh,
Um,
Christine wrote in that she has pictures of her stomach. Okay, like I really want to see that, but I really don't want to see that, and I'm torn at the fact that how much I really want to see that.
I have a drawing. I have a drawing, and my husband actually has a picture of it because he had said if I ever have to have a procedure, I can't have a blind intubation. They
Yeah.
have to get the scope down there because of the position of the way my stomach is. So my husband's like, "What's that mean?" So while I was recovering, he drew a picture. My husband actually has the picture, so if I have to go anywhere, he's like, this is what it looks like. This is."
Oh my god, I love that. Okay, you need to send that to me because I want to see it.
I
Um,
will.
so what would you like? What do you? I'm a hot mess today. What would you think is like what keeps you motivated? Like because you get so comfortable in your new lifestyle, and it's very easy for people to fall back into old habits, into old patterns, and kind of slowly revert backwards. How do you stay consistent and motivated all of this time?
Well, I've had two kids after my surgery. I have a 16-year-old and a 13. And, it's always been my kids. My older one now is married and she's out of the house. And then I have these two. And now that they're older and they don't need me as much, it's for me. I want to be around to now one day be a grandmother, God willing. And I want to be able to play with them like my mom did that day at McDonald's with my daughter.
Yeah.
I want to be able to keep going out and doing things with my husband because my husband is very athletic and he goes to the gym and we go together. And it's for me. Because I remember that before I had that surgery, that Jamie was very depressed and not in a good place. And I never want to go back to that place again. So that's why when you said, do you have pictures? I go, well, it's hard for me to find them. I have to find them in my oldest baby album. But that Jamie, I tried to forget because I
Yeah.
never want to go back to where I was there.
And it's so funny, I wasn't even thinking the other day. I had asked Jamie for like a couple pictures so that I can create this event for the show and everything. And she's like, I'm gonna have to open up an old photo album. And I'm like, oh my god, it's
If
been
you notice,
25 years.
if
There
you
was no
notice,
cell
one of
phones
them,
back then to have your picture in a cell phone or whatever. Like
yep,
it just that blew me away. And I'm like, oh, I mean, like, you can just send me whatever at this point. Like,
yeah. If you notice, one of the pictures I sent you was that was my first wedding,
yeah,
and then the baby in that picture is my oldest.
which is like it
Yeah,
just like cracked me up. I'm like, I totally forgot that this was like 1996. We didn't have it was disposable cameras back then.
yep. And I tried to get rid of as many pictures as I could because that was the time in my life that I just didn't want to go back
You
to.
know, I mean, look, I totally get that mentality. My thing, there's a lot of things that I wish that I could erase from history. I mean, like we can't erase history.
Right.
I've learned over time that that shit that happened in your history kind of helped define who you are today and the
Exactly.
person that you become. So as much as I would have rather certain things probably not happened, how much different would my life be now had those things
Yes.
not learned from it or whatever?
Yeah.
Um, so even though your experience is completely different than what somebody is going to be going through tomorrow if they decide to have the surgery, but if somebody came up to you who's thinking about having the surgery in general, what advice would you give them?
This is your journey. You can't control anybody else except yourself. So you have to be accountable for yourself. Don't do it for anybody else. Don't do it for, I just want to look good. Do
Right.
it because you want to be here tomorrow. What's your purpose? Because I wasn't doing it for my ex-husband. And
Right.
I was doing it for my daughter, but I was doing it to be healthy for my daughter, to be here. Not
Right.
because, my ex-husband was like, oh, you're fat. No, I wasn't doing that for you. I was doing it for my health, for her.
So that I could be in my best self to take care of
Right.
her.
Because if I wouldn't be here today, I wouldn't have had these two other kids. I wouldn't have the amazing husband I have now.
That's incredible. And so because it was so long ago, like did you have any issues with like excess skin or anything like that?
So I got kind of lucky because I was 20 years old, and our elasticity back then is like woohoo, nice. Um, so I do have like here, I still have this here.
Oh, shut up. Is that what you're dealing with right now? I mean, like, come on.
I go to the gym a lot, and then I have some on my belly. I do have,
Okay.
especially when I sit down, I can pinch it. Um, but that's really been it. Like I never had this hanging here.
Yeah.
My thighs, my legs were never big, so kind of always had like chicken legs. So I guess that saved me too. Um, but that's really been it. And they have all said it's because I was so young that the elasticity in my skin has come back. But I'll be honest with you, after having the two kids and both C-section, my super pubic area,
Yeah.
fupa, whatever you want to call it, is not the same. And that still gives me a complex. And I always say to myself, I'm going to have a tummy tuck. I want to have a tummy tuck. 25 years I've been saying I want to have that done. And then I'm like, but I don't want to have it done for the right reason. I want to have it done
Right.
because it looks good, but I look good as per my husband, no matter what.
Yeah. And see, this is what I struggle with. So even like I had the surgery because that was my only option. Like there was nothing else that was going to work for me at that point. So for me, it wasn't a vanity thing. It was a survival thing. If I wanted
Yeah.
to live, I need to have the surgery. But I also look at, I always looked at plastic surgery as learn to love your body as it is, learn to be comfortable in your own skin.
Yeah.
But how often, like we talk about it, when you're 350 pounds, you're fat everywhere. Like it
Yeah.
is consistent. Like there is no one part that happens to look good. Like, but when you lose weight, all of a sudden, like specific attributes are now heightenedly bad.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, you're a size 6 or whatever, but then everything is like hanging down and they're isolated areas. And I feel like it creates this whole different slew of
Yeah.
insecurities because now like the attention is fixated on one area and it drives me crazy.
Yeah, like I'll be honest, I have some slim fitting dresses and I'll put my Colombian faja on. And my
Yeah.
husband's like, what are you doing? I'm like, you see this little pouch area here? It drives me crazy. Like it doesn't look good. He's like, well,
Yeah.
do something about it. I'm like, but I'm not ready to go under the knife for a dress.
Right.
Like I haven't found that reason yet. Maybe one day I'll do it. I
I
don't
know.
know.
I I just had like a virtual consultation. I just wanted to see what are the
Right.
options, how much does it cost. This one particular place, we're not going to name names.
Uh-huh.
Uh they gave me pricing if you wanted to do something isolated, like if you just wanted to do a tummy tuck or just your arms or whatever. Each individual item was a $10,000 procedure. And that like freaking blew me away. So then
What?
I'm like, okay, but what if there has to be like 2-for-1 deals? Like if you get like your arms and your tummy done at the same time, it's only one round of anesthesia. So like maybe there's a discount. And they're like, no, it's just the. So I'm like, so if I want to get like my
Oh,
arms and my
Jesus.
stomach and my thighs done, let's say, that was gonna be $31,000. I'm like, I
That's
can literally.
more than your surgery.
It's more than my surgery. I could buy a car. I could put money down on a house or like get some
Yeah.
skin removal. Like, are you freaking kidding me? So,
Wow.
granted, that was one consultation I had that we will probably not go to again.
Yeah,
Uh,
we're not gonna go there.
yeah, but I'm toying with the idea because I still go back and forth. We should love ourselves
That's it.
as we
That's it. If I get up every day and I look in the mirror, especially because my husband made my closet the folding mirror, so I see it every day, and I look at myself and I go, "Does this bother you? Does this bother you?" And I say to myself, "No, just go to the gym."
yeah.
The only time it bothers me is when I wear this one dress, but that's not gonna define me going under the knife for that. I'm not ready to. Maybe
No,
one day.
it's just frustrating because this year I've become so active in so many ways that I never even dreamed possible.
Yeah,
And there's certain moments like I took I took my first pole dancing class yesterday
I'm
because
going on the 7th. I'm
are you
going on the
really?
7th. I am. Me and
Okay,
everybody
I
else
want
are
to hear
going.
all about it. So I've
Oh,
never done anything like that before. I have zero upper body strength, but for me, I was like, I'm in this kick where I just want to try shit and see what
right.
you're capable of. And I was so excited because I was able to do like this fancy move where you're like upside down and your legs are in the air or whatever.
Hey.
And on one moment, you're on cloud nine. Like I just accomplished something that I would have never been able to do. But then you see a picture and your thighs, like part of your thigh is like muscular as fuck, and it looks really good. And then
Yeah,
this conglomerate of like hanging, and you're like, it just like killed the whole moment.
I know, but just focus on that muscle. Look at how good it looked. Look at how sexy it looks. So what are we gonna do next? We're gonna hit the gym. We're gonna hit those weights, and we're
Yes.
gonna start making that muscle sexier, bigger,
Yes.
more parts
So
of your body.
yeah, and so she was really sweet and like she was like totally pumping me up. And so I was like, if you can start giving me exercises that I can do on my own to really start like helping to build certain muscles in some areas so that if I was to come back and do this again, then it's just gonna only benefit me. But
Right.
it gets so frustrating when something like, to be on such a high and a low
Yeah.
at the
Yeah.
same
And
time.
it for a while I had like the body dysmorphia. It was
Mhm.
like, wow, I would look in the mirror and I would still see the same old Jamie. And even when I first started dating my husband, he was this husband. I sound like I had so many. um, and he's 6'3", and I would wear his clothes, And he's like, why are you wearing my clothes? Like, he's like, they don't even fit you. But I just wanted to cover stuff and hide stuff. And he's like, what are you hiding? What are you covering up? I
Mhm.
had to get out of my own head. And that was hard, especially when I would go through hard times, or, something was going on, because I always was an emotional eater. So I'd have an argument with somebody, and in the back of my mind is like, wow, what do I have in the fridge that I can go eat? I had to get that mindset and just throw it out the window.
Right.
And
And that's
eventually you get comfortable. I'm not going to say I'm 100% in
right.
love. I'm comfortable, and I appreciate my body for everything that it has gone through and has, handled. And
Yeah.
I'm not gonna abuse it or do something crazy to it just for a dress. You know what I'm saying?
No, I get that. And I didn't realize how powerful body dysmorphia is until you're going through it, because we've talked about it in prior shows before. Like, you go through it in
Like,
both phases. There were times like when you're 350 pounds and you don't see yourself that big until a
mm,
random picture or something comes along, and then when it happens in the other direction, it's crazy. Yesterday, like I said, I did this like pole dancing, and it was a private lesson. It was just me and the instructor, and I was struggling with trying to figure it out. So she brought like these silks things that like you
mm-hmm.
attach to the pole or whatever. And the first thing that came out of my mouth, I swear to God, I was like, "What's the weight limit on this?" And she kind of looked at me like I was like ridiculous, and I'm like, "No." And like it was in that
Yeah.
split second, I was still 350 pounds. I'm like, "I'm gonna break this thing,"
Yes, absolutely.
and that's
Absolutely.
years later. So
Yeah.
because you didn't have support groups and you didn't have people that you can share these things with, like, if somebody, like, is there advice that you can give to somebody who goes, through those thoughts with like body dysmorphia, and I don't know what the answer is.
You know, I really don't have an answer for back then. Now, my answer would be, you're not alone. Go talk to somebody, get yourself into a group. Talk to me, talk to you. You're not alone. Back then, I really was alone. And
Yeah,
that's why my body dysmorphia had gotten so bad. Um, and I had to get myself out of that funk, that that
on your
ditch,
own.
you know. But now I always tell people, you're not alone. I go through that. I still go through that. I still struggle. It's okay to get there. Don't stay there, because it's like a rabbit hole.
Mm-hmm.
Don't get yourself in there, because then you get depressed, and then you isolate yourself, and just it's not good. Get out. Get out of there. I have a friend who just had the surgery, well, not just, but 3 years ago, and she was kind of in that. And now let's go. Hey, I may have worked all night. 9 o'clock, I'm texting her, we're going to the gym. Let's go. I'll meet you. I'll even meet you at your gym, because we go to the same gym, so I can go to hers too. I'm like, come on, let's go. Get out of there. You know, let's keep each other motivated. You need a support system.
100%. And this is one thing that I absolutely love about you. And I had come across your TikTok and stuff, is you're somebody that you had this surgery so long ago. It's so far removed from your day-to-day vocabulary and even like your recent history.
Hmm.
However, comma, with that being said, is 25 years later, you're still playing like this active part, helping other
Hmm.
people who are just starting out. And I just love that characteristic of you, is like there's so much, even though a lot of what you can offer, you can't relate on the same level because your
Right.
initial experience was so different.
Yes.
But I feel like because your experience was so analog, like, and you and I have joked about that,
Hmm.
that I feel like you have a lot to bring to people, whether it has to do with like the mental aspect of it, how to stay on track and motivated, how to keep yourself pumped up, because you literally had nobody and
Yeah.
kind of had to just figure it out on your own. And that's what I just wanted to give you
Thank you.
for that.
Thank you. A lot of people will say to me, why don't you make more TikToks about, weight loss surgery? And because there's a lot of people that have had the surgery 14 years, 10 years, and,
Mhm.
they're blowing up and stuff like that. And I'm like, because I don't want to, put myself out there and be like, oh, I know everything. I'm the veteran, come to me. I don't, because I'm still learning this process the way it
Right.
is now. Like if I tell people how I went through it, they'd be like, well, I didn't have 10 feet removed. Well, I didn't have this. I don't have this
Right.
scar. All I can offer people is how I stay motivated, how it's been successful for me. If you want to know that, I can help you what my goal, my journey has been, and
Right.
maybe it'll help somebody else. But I've about making all these videos, and I'm like, no, but I do put it on there. I'm like 25 years RNY. I'm here to help anybody who needs it, and
No, and
that's it.
it's really cool because you get to a certain point where like once you're a couple years out, people kind of like want to eat you up like a sponge. Like they want to ask you. And I tell them, I said, look, there's some suggestions that I can give, but that just worked for me. It might not work for you. And
Yes.
that's okay. And the cool thing is there's so many people out there with so many different experiences. You kind of get to have like this buffet style where you get to pick and choose what
Yeah.
elements work for you personally in your everyday life.
Yeah. Yep. And you have a lot of people that food, what do they call them? Food haters or something,
Oh,
like
like
food
food
police.
police?
Yeah, and I don't say anything because I eat everything. After 25 years, I don't restrict myself of not eating that. I restrict myself of how much I eat it and how often I eat it.
Right.
But I couldn't imagine being here 25 years and never having a piece of cake again, never having a pizza. I eat everything, but I eat everything in moderation, and I make sure that, and it's not, oh, I have, my cheat day. No, I don't have a cheat day. I just eat it when I feel like it, but I know if I ate it Monday, guess what? I'm not eating again this week. Like,
Right.
I keep a track for myself mentally.
Yeah.
And I think people that shame other people, shame on you. Shame on
No, I
you,
freaking
because you don't know why that person is eating. We don't eat just because we want to eat, because we want to, there's always, most of the time, and like I say always, something going on in the background. And that's how people compensate. They eat, or they drink, or they do whatever. But you don't always shame on you,
right.
shame on you. It's not right. You think that's going to help? That is not going to help anybody. All you're going to do is make them eat more. So you got to be there, be listening ear, keep your mouth closed. Listen, let that person needs to let something out. And if you're not going to be there to help them and listen, then don't be there. But if you are, then shut up, listen, and don't judge. And when they're ready, they'll ask you, what do you think? And that's what I wait for.
Right. And
You
that's
want,
why like, I get so frustrated. Like we all started at the beginning at one point. We all know how hard that struggle is. Or, people who are addicted to soda and like they post on Facebook, like I really want a soda really bad. And then like the warriors just come out firing
mhm,
off on their keyboards, like desecrating. Like who the f are you? Like you didn't have those thoughts before. Like you didn't. She's not saying that she drank the Sprite challenge or did like a 2 liter cola. Like she just had like she was just expressing, I'm struggling.
exactly,
I'm asking for
exactly.
help. And
Yep. I had somebody had posted a question about a straw, and I always say, talk with your physician, because everybody's procedure is different. Talk with your physician. I say, but me personally, I have always used a straw. And some lady said to me, that's not in the rules. Follow the rules. We're not supposed to. And I said to her, well, I'm 25 years out and I'm okay.
like I
And she
think I'm gonna.
she was like, oh, congratulations. Oh, that's so okay if it works for you. Oh my goodness, good, good, good. Like, don't come after people.
Yeah.
Don't come. Like, you don't know me. You don't know. I didn't have the surgery yesterday. You don't know if
Right.
my doctor. A lot of people, their surgeons let them use a straw from the moment they're out of recovery. Like, don't.
Right.
That's why sometimes I'm like, all right, TikTok, I gotta go.
I have learned that in certain cases I have to refrain myself, or
Yes.
I've like gotten this whole entire paragraph and then I'm like, it's not worth it. It's not worth it.
Yeah, it's
Just
not worth it. It's not worth it.
it's not worth it.
Yeah.
Well, I can't even believe that entire hour has like already
I
gone.
know.
Like I'm
My
like so not
gosh.
even done with you. I had other questions. That's usually how my life goes. First and foremost, I hope that you're going to come back again because I think you have
Absolutely.
so much value to offer people,
Thank you.
especially like, I consider myself a veteran at this point, and that's like, it's barely 8 years, and you're like, I don't even hold a candle to you. And so that's why, like, I just love, because the thing is, they always say that you should surround yourself with people who are more successful than you or who are further out than you, so that you can learn and, like I said, take it in like a sponge and continuously bettering yourself. And I think you're just like the perfect specimen to
Thank
be able
you.
to do that. So I really
Thank you.
appreciate you
Thank
being
you.
here
Thank
today.
you. Thank you. If it just helps one person, then that's our goal. Just one person.
100%. Um,
And nobody's alone. Nobody's alone. She's here for you. I'm here for you.
yeah, we're all
You're
here
not
for you.
alone. You don't have to isolate yourself. It is possible to be successful after so many years, and you're not alone. That is the most important thing to know. We've all have struggled, and we all still struggle. But this
Yes.
is your journey, and you're only responsible for yourself.
And to everybody who's watching this, whether you're watching it live or watching it later, I said, look at Jamie. She's been in this for 25 years. She is proof that there is long-term results, that there is light at the end of the tunnel. And when you're struggling over those 1 ounce sips right now, here's somebody who can tell you it
Get
gets
through
way,
it.
way better.
I promise you, it's hard at first, and you're gonna hate it, but you're gonna get through it. Just keep pushing.
100%. So is there anything last minute that you would like to add before we leave today? Any parting words of wisdom?
Just like I said before, it's your journey. It's your tool. It's not a fixer upper. It's not a magic, pouch. It is a tool. Give yourself the knowledge, get yourself support, get a good friend, get a buddy, somebody that is going to be by your side and not be negative. And this tool will be the best tool of your life. But it's a tool. It's not a magic fix. You have to work it. That's all I got.
I think that's good. I think you did a good job. If anybody wants to follow her on TikTok, what's your TikTok handle?
Oh, Lord, I forgot. JJRN43. JAYJAYRN43.
You heard the lady. I'll also post it because I'll go on TikTok and I'll confirm it, and I'll
Okay.
post it in the comments below for people who are watching this later. Once again, thank you so much for joining us today. It
Thank
was
you for having
truly,
me.
truly a pleasure. I hope you're going to come back.
Absolutely. I would
And
love to.
to all of you guys watching, just a heads up, we are going to have a very special episode on Friday where we're going to celebrate a surgiversary, which I'm really excited to.
Ooh.
It's her surgiversary, so she's going to pop on and kind of like let us know what's been going on since the last time she was on. And until then, we will see you guys on Friday.